Hello, I'm Reggie Turner, and I'm here with Andy Overton and Matt Breeden. The FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. Tonight we welcome Kira Hammond, chair of the group Citizens Above Partisanship. Kira, what can you tell us about your organization?
Well, what do you want to know?
What do you have to tell us?
Well, CAP, we call it CAP because
Okay.
Citizens Above Partisanship is a bit of a mouthful.
Yes.
Is a political action committee registered with the state of Maryland. But we're not like most political action committees that you may think of, these sort of like wealthy organizations that donate to candidates to get things that they want. We are a grassroots organization, a grassroots political action committee, if that's not a contradiction in terms. And our focus is cooperative local government. So we were formed after the 20, oh my gosh, I'm having a moment, 2016 election. 2016,
Okay.
We were formed in 2017, but it was the 2016 election. Because we were concerned about the divisiveness in the country, but as it trickled down into local Washington County politics. So we don't consider national politics at all in our organization, although of course all of us have political views and opinions at the national and state level, but it's really just focused on Washington County politics and not even on specific issues in Washington County politics, but on the way Washington County is governed, with an eye toward trying to elect officials who will work together for the common good at the local level.
Gotcha. Now, right now, how many members does your organization have?
Well, membership is a strange thing in CAP. So we've got, I don't know, and you might have a better number than I do, we've got about 150 people on our email distribution list. And so that's people who are interested in what we're doing, who maybe show up for our events, who support our mission enough to tolerate some email from us now and then. Then we have people who run the organization, and I don't just mean the office holders, but the active volunteers who vote on issues, and that's a much smaller group. But we're always looking to build our membership. We're interested in connecting with anyone in Washington County who's interested in what we do, who support our mission, who want to have a stronger voice in Washington County's, in cooperative government in Washington County. So we take all comers.
Got it. Matt?
I'm interested in your organization. I'm familiar with it only by rumor. So you're set up.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, but I just heard about it.
Can you tell us the rumors first? Let's just get into this.
Nothing too talky. So you have an organization, you have bylaws, officers.
We do, yep.
How does one become a member?
Well,
I mean,
again,
do
it
you- I mean,
depends
do-
on the level of membership that you're interested in. If you are just interested in what we're doing and you want to show up for our events and help us out with things, Andy will take your email address after we finish taping the show.
So being a part of a PAC, is there an actual membership application, a dues? I mean, anything
If you
like
want to be able to vote in the organization, it's a $20 annual
Okay,
dues.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of curious. And you said about 150 emails. How many actual members do you have that have really put skin in the game?
Oh, I don't know the number right
It's really
now.
difficult because after what happened with COVID, obviously, even though it was just $20, a lot of people said, "Hold up, let's see what's going to happen with our finances." So we have dwindled, I think, considerably.
Yeah,
but we have a ton of people who like the organization enough to volunteer for events when we do have them. And to interact with us on Zoom, but we don't have a lot of really big paying members. It's a much smaller group.
We should have invited Sean, who has our treasurer, keeps those numbers. Historically, it's been in the 25 to 50 range, maybe 30s, 40s in a given year, and it does fluctuate somewhat. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And in full disclosure, I am also part of CAP, obviously. So
sorry if I wasn't supposed to say that.
No, that's great actually, and it's a great organization to help kind of build these bridges across, obviously, the county. But But I mean, I know the answer to this, but I would love to talk more about why we think that is so important. Why is it so important to be above partisanship? And why is it so important to be able to sometimes not, I mean, can you still take a stand and draw that line and say, no, that is too far? What does this really mean? And I think, and the reason I'm asking this is that I get that question a lot, you know, because there are always ethical and moral boundaries that we say, no, we're not crossing those for anyone that is very hurtful or that is disenfranchising. So why is this nonpartisanship important in your mind?
So Frederick Douglass said, I will unite with anyone to do right and no one to do wrong, right? And that's sort of the underlying idea behind CAP is I don't care what your politics are. If you want to work with me for the good of the county, the common good of the citizens of Washington County, I'm in. And that's kind of what CAP stands for. And even more than that, we want our elected officials to stand for that. And we work for electing people who we think will do that and will do that effectively, who are committed to that. It does not mean you have to check your own politics at the door, as you well know. It does not mean that you are a moderate. That's one that I get a lot. Oh, you must be a moderate if you believe this. No, not at all. You don't have to have middle of the road values in order to appreciate perspectives that are different than your own. And that's what we're really looking for, is people who will work with people who they disagree with for a higher purpose and not just always try to put their own priorities ahead of everything else. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Oh, completely. That's exactly, at least that's what I say when people ask me that question. I do think that if we can put the higher good above, then I think there's a way that we can work together as long as we are doing good, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I will also say that it's much easier at the local level than it is at certainly the national level, but even the state and regional level. Most of local politics is almost by nature nonpartisan. You know, you think about infrastructure, you think about the economic development, you think about all of these things, you think about ethics, which is a big thing that CAP focuses on. These are things that cross party lines. Everybody's concerned about them. We may have slightly different angles on how to handle them, but most of the time at the local level, not fundamentally different perspectives on how to handle them.
Now, right now with your organization, do you have representatives or members from all spectrums politically?
We do, yeah, yep, that's really important to us. So among our elected and our leadership team, I guess I would say, we have Republicans and Democrats. Historically, we've often had independents as well, and even third-party libertarian members in that group. We don't right now have that. And then among our members, it varies as well. I think there's less political diversity in our membership than we would like. Again, our leadership team is pretty good. I think it reflects the county pretty well, which, as you know, the county is, contrary to popular belief, not majority Republican. It's plurality Republican. So anyway, but the membership does skew left, and which is not to say that all of our members are left-leaning, but more are than we feel is appropriate to balance. To reflect the balance in the county. And I think there are a number of reasons for that, and to some extent it's understandable, and to some extent we just have to keep trying to convince people who are further to the right that we're not here to just, with some liberal agenda. We really do want cooperative government in the county.
So when ethical issues come up in our community, is CAP using their voice to speak up against those issues? So for instance, if you have a candidate that you may have endorsed and they're not living up to that, is that something where your organization is in a position to speak out, or how do you handle ethical issues? I mean, and for example, we had an issue with our county commissioners recently.
Yep.
How did your organization handle that, and kind of what's your stance on speaking out about such issues?
We absolutely speak out about those issues, whether they involve candidates that we are connected to or not. In that particular case, we were connected to that candidate. We had endorsed Commissioner Meinl-Schmidt in that election. he seemed to share a lot of our values about working across political differences to get things done in the county. And frankly, I would say he did do quite a lot of that. However, the Ethics Commission said that he had violated the ethics policy and needed to be removed. And we spoke out. We released a statement supporting the findings of the Ethics Commission and calling for him to respect their decision and step down. So yeah, we do. We also have spoken out on other issues that are less personally connected to the organization, but that we felt were important to say something about. Yeah.
Gotcha. Matt.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point about Court. I did not realize you endorsed him openly. But,
Yeah.
That's very
We did.
interesting. For the record, the Republican Party of Washington County also called for his resignation.
I remember. I read all of those things.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I really don't have any questions. Actually, I do have one. You might not be aware of this, and this is not a shameless plug, audience, but I'm a chairman of a PAC here in Washington County also.
Which one?
The Washington County Republican Club PAC.
Oh, the club. Okay.
Well, yeah, but the official PAC, and we're registered. So someone like that, me, how welcome would I be in your organization?
100% welcome. We have been trying to connect with the RCC as well as, actually we've had a lot more luck with members of the club than with members of the Central Committee in terms of getting people to, talk
There's
to us
smiles
about
here
things.
at the table because they know my history. Well, I'm going to formally invite you to our picnic this July 28th at Potomac Fish and Game Club,
I'm
and we would like to see you there.
flattered, and I would love to come. I attended I guess this was the Central Committee, the Lincoln Reagan dinner just a few years ago, in fact.
With Ollie North?
No, it was the one,
Because I was the chair for that one.
I'm not sure who the guest was. I can't remember anymore. I'm sorry. It was.
So I think we just made a match in heaven. So this is the kind of the cool thing about CAP, right?
Right.
Is that I really think that the ability to cross different political parties, if we're holding up that higher good, is obviously on display here today. And so I just think that it's important to be open to all of that. So that's a wonderful invitation.
Yeah,
and
accept.
I think that's a public yes, is what I'm
Absolutely,
hearing,
I
right?
accept, yes.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think that's the important part of this club, to be honest, and this PAC, is that this is the exact purpose, is to reach across aisles so that we can uplift our community in any way and be able to get some stuff done. So where do you see this organization really moving forward in the next election cycle? I know we have a little bit of a dip right now, but as you probably have read, that there are lots of people making announcements. There's movement in our political parties at our state level, at our local levels, and what's happening. What's on the horizon for CAP in the next couple months?
That's a great question. So CAP sort of, as I said, we only started a few years ago, so we're still evolving, but we sort of operate on a 2-year cycle. So in election years, we endorse candidates. We send out an invitation to seek our endorsement to everybody who's filed for just local offices. And anyone who responds to that invitation, we interview and decide if we're going to endorse them. And so I see that happening in the next election cycle, absolutely, with the local races. And then in the off years, we are much more sort of outreach and education focused. As I'm sure all of you are well aware, there's sort of a dearth of understanding of the political processes and a lower level of civic engagement. Not just in Washington County, but probably around the country, than many of us would like to see. And so we try to encourage people to become involved and to understand what's going on in the county and what they can do to have an impact on it.
Do you do any work towards voter registration?
No, we do not. We could, I suppose.
Yeah, we could, but also we want to make sure that we're, I think, representing the ideas of reaching across aisle, and there are plenty of organizations that do voter registration. With that said, though,
Right.
if someone were to come to us and say, "Hey, I don't understand the process. How do I register to vote?" I think that any of our membership, as well as our executive committee, would certainly point them in the right direction. But we typically don't do outreach for that because we have some other events coming up.
Well, and because we do endorse candidates and then we work on their behalf to get them elected, you can't do that if you're registering voters. Now, of course, you can not do that at the voter registration event. That's
Yeah.
like the political parties themselves do that. But I think we've historically at least felt that our energy should be spent supporting these candidates and getting them elected rather than other things.
And since you are a newer organization, do you have any staple events that you host?
Pre or post COVID?
Right,
That's like
that's-
a pre. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Pre-COVID, because we're coming out, so
We are.
we're going to be
That's
able to
right.
gather
Yeah, yeah.
again.
We have had, yeah. So again, none of these things have happened very many times
Right.
because we lost a whole year there. But we table, I guess, is
We do,
the
yeah.
verb form of table at a number of local events. We will be at the Freedom Fest at the end of this month. We have been at Peach Fest a couple of times, and then smaller local events around the various municipalities. But for our own events, we've done a holiday bash kind of thing a couple of times in person. In fact, we tried to do one virtually this year, and it was fun. It was different. I mean, it was Zoom.
Yeah.
We were all
however you
everybody's
can
kinda
holiday on
sick of
Zoom. We
Zoom.
holidayed on Zoom. I mean,
But that's been an event that we've tried to sort of have the social angle of the transpartisanship or the not nonpartisan values, where we've invited people from local government from across all different perspectives to come and chat together, and it's worked pretty well, actually. We had several Republican county commissioners and Democratic city councilors at our last in-person event like that, and they had a great time. They were all hanging out at the bar, you know, that's good.
Well, if you're having beverage, you're going to
Well, exactly, that's
you're
right.
going to get
That
a
settles a
few
lot
friends.
of differences.
That's right.
You know, one other thing I was thinking is, do you have any challenges around diversity when it comes to your members?
You mean racial and ethnic, religious,
Yes.
that kind of diversity? So I told you the political diversity
Yes.
issues that we have. Yeah, absolutely, we do. We have worked very hard to reach out to communities that aren't showing up to our meetings and events on their own. We've moved our meetings around the county to try to make that easier for people. Pre-COVID, we had started meeting at the library downtown, sort of a central location. There's parking. We lost actually quite a few loyal members because they were from outlying areas and didn't want to come downtown in the evening to a meeting. So that was interesting. On the other hand, we got a much more diverse group of people showing up at our events, and that was great. That was really wonderful to see. I hope that will continue post-COVID. During COVID, we shifted things a little. People are so Zoom fatigued. We just really haven't been doing meetings the way we were before.
Do you hold monthly meetings, regular meetings on the calendar
Again, pre-COVID, yes.
now?
Now we have been doing it less often, I guess I would say, because of everybody's so sick of being online all the time. We had our annual meeting in March of this year, and we are doing the summer events. I think we have an event every month this summer, which aren't meetings per se, but
Right,
things
right.
where we're getting people together to do things. We're doing a really cool and exciting thing, which Andy and Karen Kramer, our secretary, are spearheading. In September and October, we will be down at the USMH Plaza. That's not the official name of it.
University
University Plaza.
University
That's what it's
Plaza.
called. Doing a sort of get to know talking to people who have different opinions than you about issues that are important to you event. So anyone can show up. It's open to the public. We may or may not have some special guests to contribute their perspectives and thoughts, but we will be there, and people will be encouraged to mingle and sort of semi-directed conversations about issues that are important in the county. So that's a cool thing that we haven't done before, outdoors like that with a
Is there a
more
firm date for
informal.
that set yet?
Yes. Do you
Yes,
know
no,
them?
funny you should ask. We moved it from one day to another, and what we're trying to do is solidify that with the city right now. And I think all of that will be up on our website in the next week or so.
So yes and no.
Yep, and we will let people know as soon as it is solidified, because it's not off the top of my head either.
It's middle of September and middle of October.
Yeah, but the
Friday
big thing
evening.
is we usually post on social media because that seems to be where everybody goes. So we do have a Facebook page, and that information will be posted there. And if folks obviously want to hop on and enter their email address into our connections, then we will certainly be able to get our monthly emails.
Yeah.
And what is the website address?
It's the whole long name, citizensabove.partisanship.com.
.org?
No,
.com?
Yeah.
Okay. We want to pick your brain some more. You mind staying with us?
No, don't mind.
Perfect. Welcome back to the show. We're still joined by Kira Hammond, Chair of Citizens Above Partisanship. Yes, I got it right.
You
right?
did. Very good.
Excellent. Kira, thank you for staying with us.
Of course.
Tell us a little bit about what brings or draws people to your organization.
Well, I think many, many Americans from across the political spectrum are concerned about the toxic polarization in our country and about the effect that that's having on our democracy. And again, we don't deal with the national level at our organization, but even at the local level, we see some of that happening. There is some pretty toxic rhetoric, if you follow any social media out there about right. And I'm pretty sure that neither Democrats nor Republicans nor independents want to destroy the country, right? And that's the rhetoric. And I can vehemently disagree with you on policy without thinking that you're evil or trying to, to dismantle our democratic structures. Now, leaving aside the very, very few number of people who actually do want to dismantle democratic society, most of us don't, right? And I think that that CAP's mission and values connect with people because everyone recognizes that if we are going to survive as a society and a democratic society, we have to work together to do that.
Now, the one thing that I did notice from your website, obviously you normally tackle local issues, but as an organization, you did make a statement about the insurrection on January 6th.
We did, that's true.
So you found that was important. Can you speak to that statement?
Yeah, we've
and the
released
decision?
statements about a few things, and usually you're right. We stick just to local issues, and that particular event we felt transcended our usual moratorium on national events because it had such an impact on everything in our entire country, right down to the local level. And it seemed, I guess, like an abdication of responsibility to ignore it. So yeah, that was unusual, but frankly, so was the insurrection.
Very true. Matt.
I'm kind of speechless here. Obviously, the audience knows, everybody knows I'm a partisan, by nature. And I think, and I agree with you, though, the fanatics on both sides will destroy us if we don't get them under control. And, the extremists are always the problems. It's not the mass of either party that have the differences. And I think, like in the earlier segment, that invitation extended to you. I think that's where we have to start working on bonding a little bit. That old saying out of the 7 habits of highly effective people, seek to understand before you seek to be understood.
Right.
And I think that's where the extremists lose it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and so I want to make a comment here because of the partisanship thing. We are citizens above partisanship. Right. We are not against partisanship. There's nothing wrong with partisanship. Partisanship is often quite appropriate. What we are against is toxic partisanship. And when we say citizens above partisanship, what we really mean is you should be a citizen before you are a partisan. right? Your role and responsibilities as a citizen of this nation comes first. And often partisan allegiance helps support that, right? But when it doesn't, citizenship has to come first. And so I think you're right that the toxic partisanship drives people to extremes. But even more than that, I would say, it's not so much people's individual views that are extreme, it's their extreme views of the other side that are the problem, the demonization of those who disagree. And there's, I won't geek out on you, but there's plenty of research that shows that people perceive those on the other side of the political divide as far more extreme than they actually are. And this is true in both directions.
I think it's fair to say the media drives a lot of that.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's definitely part of it. Yep, misinformation is a big part of it. And so we hope that at least at the grassroots local level, we can start to bridge that and correct it, I guess I would say, not so much bridge as correct it, with exactly the kind of connection you're making by inviting me to your picnic.
You know, the thing that I see when we talk about partisanship, and you see this locally, where it has nothing to do with a national issue, but someone could be a Republican or Democrat in this community, and they're tagged with everything that's happening nationally. You know, and we've seen a lot of that in the past few years of such and such as a Democrat, so they believe in all of these things, and the majority of those things have no real impact on the day-to-day lives of citizens in our community. Is that something that you see from your vantage point?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I would love to think that we could make these kinds of connections and work for cooperative government at the national level, but that is way above my pay grade. It's the local level where it's so clear, these things that we have in common. We all want our kids to grow up safe and educated and, you know, healthy. That's not a partisan thing, right? And yet it is extremely connected to how we're governed locally.
Yeah. Andy, let's get you back in the game.
Yeah, man. So here's my deal, though. I mean, I'm obviously in education, and we talk a lot about education here on the show. And what I've noticed, though, is that even especially at a national level, but at a local level, a lot of folks sometimes don't understand how our government works. I don't mean the policies they make. I mean physically that there is a mayor, a city council, a band of commissioners, what Senate's group or area you're in. How can CAP really play a role in local governance in order to expand that education and let people know? And if you think more individuals understood how it worked in Washington County, could that help bridge that partisanship? Could that help bridge that divide? Because as you said earlier, we all want our kids to be safe when we go to school. We all want access to free and healthy water. We want to be able to get our trash taken out. We want to be able to have the police responsibly show up to our house when someone's breaking into it. Does education play a role in bringing that gap together or reaching across the aisle to get things done? Thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, I'm also in education, as you know, and I would never say education is not part of the solution to almost any problem or question. So yeah, I think, and because you're talking about voter education.
Exactly. I'm not talking about education on traditional or non-traditional. I just mean the understanding of how, as citizens, how we are governed.
Basic civics.
I think that's part of it. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I think that is important and a piece of it, but I would say that the real issue is not so much voter education as voter empowerment. And that the reason so many people are distanced from the political process is because they feel like they can't do anything about it. They feel like their vote doesn't matter. They feel like their voice isn't heard. They feel like no matter what I do, the same things happen over and over. And so to the extent that they're wrong and they just don't understand what they could do, then yeah, education is a piece there. But to the extent that there are other factors at play impacting the I'm sorry to use the word twice in a row, impact that certain constituencies can have on the political process, there's a larger issue there, I think.
Wow. So you said voter empowerment. I think that's a strong statement. And I think what I'm getting from that is to be able to say that one vote can make a difference, right? And that understanding what that one vote can mean could be the difference between one person being elected or a different person being elected, or just being involved in the process that would empower that person to get involved in politics if they wanted to. So I think that's a very powerful statement, voter empowerment. I don't know if I've heard that before. Well done. That was in my head. So I'm gonna,
Excellent.
I'm
Excellent.
gonna tag you. But
looking at this upcoming election cycle, we have state elections, and we have, candidates that are starting to come to the community. Is CAP kind of sitting out the state level elections in regards to those, so there's no involvement at that level?
There never has been. We have not had that conversation for this particular election cycle yet as an organization. We are focused on Washington County politics, but of course you could make a case that at least some of the state level races are Washington County politics. I guess I don't want to say definitively that we don't get involved in those races, but we never have, and we certainly have not made any kind of decision to do that this time.
I would just say this, since I have 2 board members sitting here, right? You have things like the comptroller race, and many people don't know what that office does, and I just think that as a part of the education piece, also sitting with 2 educators, there's an opportunity there to engage. I'm not sure if that's a scope that you would want to take on, but that's just a consideration from my standpoint.
Yeah, and I will say the education piece, which is sort of what we do more of in the off years between election cycles, is we have no such qualms about educating about higher level national politics or political structures. I guess I should say, not so much politics, or talking about apportionment and those kinds of questions. At an educational level, we just haven't gotten involved in those races.
Gotcha.
I think it's interesting, the idea of civics, and I have to wonder how many, since we're talking about 2 major parties, how many Republicans and Democrats have actually ever read the platform for their party to understand, to even before they decide I am this or I am that.
Well, the Republican Party doesn't have one, right?
I'm sorry?
Didn't the Republican Party fail to produce a platform?
I just was reading it when you came in tonight.
Oh, there's a new one. Okay, good.
And but I was just thinking about that, and the absence of self-education, taking the time to read, to understand. We all grew up hearing these things, that there's 2 things you never talk about, and your grandparents always said it. We don't talk about religion or politics. And I was taught that growing up, and I can't help but to think there's probably no 2 things that guide the way we live our lives more than those 2 things.
I agree.
And with that said, this is a discussion that has to be had civilly. But I think also there's an absence of civics. Kids don't understand at an early what it means, how our governments work. And I think we might have a problem there. Maybe that's something organizations like yours and mine should be doing.
So I teach math, and
Interesting.
Are you fluent in TikTok?
I'm not.
Okay.
social media, I'll help you out. Don't worry, I got you.
And I will tell you that learning algebra is really important, and I could bemoan all day, if you want, how little algebra most people and certainly students know. And the solution is not just to shout algebra at them louder and slower. The solution is to show them why they should care. And I think the same is true of civics. Yeah, you're right. People don't understand. Kids aren't learning it. They don't. Why not? Because they don't think it matters. Because they don't care about it. So instead of saying you should care, we have to show them why they should care. And that's the empowerment piece, I think.
Boom. Boom. Very good. Yeah. So if education plays such a big part in this, I wonder if that's something. I mean, ideas are now going off in my head, and also I'll be sending you a membership packet very soon, as for you as well, and make sure that these voices continually be heard at CAP
our
leadership.
PAC takes you no matter what your political affiliation is.
That's right.
Or
That's
I can
right.
I
opt
believe
out.
in education, so I can work on you.
But I can
Absolutely,
also
you can.
opt out and just send you a donation as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you'd like to do that, we certainly would be happy to cash that check in the name of nonpartisanship.
And my PAC would do
Or
that as well.
partisanship. Very good. All right.
After the break, we'll talk more with Kira Hammond. Stay with us. Welcome back to the show. Kira, thank you for staying with us today.
My pleasure.
In talking about, picking up on where we left off, what role does our elected officials, press, and others play in this process?
In partisanship?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we mentioned the media already, right? And I'm certainly not on the all media is evil bandwagon.
Right.
By any means, I think we need a robust media to have a functioning democracy. With that said, social media in particular, as a amplifier of highly partisan, often frankly incorrect information, plays an outsized role.
Yes.
I think it's very easy for people to be in a bubble and only ever hear things that reinforce what they already believe. And we know that people already have a tendency to hear things that reinforce what they already believe. And when that's all you hear, then that becomes a problem. So I think you can diversify your media diet, but not by picking the most extreme thing on the other side, which is just going to make you mad, because you're probably not listening to the most extreme thing on your side either, right? But try to be fair, right? What leans the other way, but is still a reasonable media outlet? Listen to that too, read that too, watch that too. That's a really good way to kind of counteract that. So in other words, I guess I'm saying it's not all on the media, right? It's on the consumer of the media as well to try to balance that. As for other politicians, you know, it's unfortunate, I think, that a great many more politicians than sort of fit the CAP model of cooperative government would like to fit it. I think there are a lot more who really believe in that, but it's very hard to do in such a polarized environment. It's very, very hard, I think, for a politician to go against their own party on an issue that they disagree with them on. And you don't have to look far to find lots of examples of that, certainly at the national level. I think what CAP is doing at the local level is trying to make that less true here in Washington County.
Got it. Andy.
Yeah, there's a lot there actually. So, you know, while I agree obviously that the consumer has to understand what they're consuming in the media, there's also an element of research, right? And there's also an element of not just believing everything that you see and read, no matter where it comes from.
Absolutely.
Because there are reports that are wrong, there is bad information, and then they come back and correct something. When I get a report from something that says, hey, this person did, I really try and fact check on my own. The problem, I think, with that is that there's not a whole lot of time in the day for other people to do the same thing. I just happen to be really passionate about doing that. And I think that, you know, media plays a big part in how we consume that information, and then we make those decisions. And those decisions that we make could be based on false information. How can we, do you think, in the local arena, as activists, as outreach professionals, as educators, help to teach that skill? Help to say, you know, once you get information, do you consider it true or false? How do you not believe it? How do you believe it? How do we teach that?
Well, that's a tall order.
It is, right? Yeah, I think we need a little bit more time,
Yeah,
but
right,
maybe in three
right.
sentences or less, you can do that, right?
I actually believe, getting back to your point about education, that's the missing piece. Not the civics education, not the 3 branches of government, but media literacy is what we're not teaching public school students, let's say.
Well, how do we
should be.
inspire curiosity? Back to your point, to the old phrase CYA, everybody knows what it is. Got a new one, challenge your assumptions. And people don't do that. And I think the point is, you know, we'll hear something in the media, and if it bleeds, it leads. You know, they do try to amp up the population. So how do we inspire people to challenge the assumptions, inspire them to learn, to go out and question everything with authority? That is a challenge I face in my leadership roles that I think all the time, you know, and you have to have, it's a double-edged sword for you. It's got to even be harder since you're dealing with such a diverse group.
Well, I think that's part of the reason we need politicians to be examples of that, right? We need our elected officials to be the ones who, they're supposed to be leaders, right? To be the ones who say, oh, you know, this other person who I disagree with on this issue has some points. And here they are. Or to say, I was wrong about that. That hardly ever happens, right? And again, at the local level, that seems attainable, right? At least more attainable, because the issues we're talking about are not so fraught, and they're not spanning this huge geographic area with, you know, so many different issues and problems. Like here in Washington County, yeah, we don't all have exactly the same problems, but it's a lot more similar
Yeah.
than if we're looking at the whole country.
Like you said, it's a lot of it's infrastructure
That's a big one
in
for
this
sure.
county.
Yep.
You know, it's
Yep.
the schools. I mean, we don't affect a lot of national elections, or can't even affect state elections very much in this county with our numbers.
Now, Kira, are there any other CAP type organizations around the state or around the country that you've modeled after?
Well, we did not model after anyone. I sometimes wish that there had been something that we could have modeled on. I think some parts of our mission, there are a lot of organizations working on the sort of depolarization and connection building across differences. There are actually a burgeoning group of nonprofits that work on that at the national level, and also some more local levels. And many of them are doing really great work. What makes CAP different is that we are a political action committee. So we are positioned to try to influence elections, and that was set up that way so that because we didn't want to just be an educational organization. We wanted to really be able to make meaningful change in Washington County, which is hard to do as a 501c3. At least politically.
Yeah, politically at least. Yeah, very good, very good.
Andy.
Yeah, I'd love to get into the idea of districting, but I leave that up to you, our fearless leader. But I have lots of questions about that. I'm not sure if we can
Take the first stab at it.
No, and it's happening, right? Redistricting and looking at those and where we are and who's going to be able to run for what area. How thoughts? I mean, I'll leave that wide open. I mean, we can take that in any direction, but I know that CAP plays a part in understanding what that means because Washington County plays a part in that entire endeavor. So, I mean, I'll let you, I will let you, and we play a central part, right? And so I'd love to hear where you want to go with that. I've got lots of questions, but.
Well, so the statewide redistrict is a great personal interest to me. It's some of the mathematics that I do is related to districting, but that is beyond the scope of what CAP is interested in. We do not that's state level politics, and it doesn't impact us. I mean, of course, it impacts us as citizens of Washington County, but it doesn't impact Washington County elections per se. What I will say about districting, since you brought it up, is that, in my opinion, one of the surest ways to diversify Washington County politics and to equalize the representation in Washington County level politics would be to have districts in this county.
For the commissioners?
Yes.
Some counties have done that.
Indeed. Yeah, many places do it that way.
Would you support districts in the city?
For the city council? Mm-hmm. You know, I don't live in the city, and I would want to hear arguments on either side of that issue. The city is much smaller, obviously, than the county. I certainly don't think I think it should be on the table. Absolutely.
And the reason I bring that up is that, you know, one of the things that I always say is that I'm a champion of the Jonathan Street community, and when you look how it's been left behind over generations, part of that is because of representation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that one pushback one will say is, well, you have 2 black city council persons. Well, I don't want to pigeonhole to say every black person is going to be the advocate for Jonathan Street, number one. And number two, I think that for that community to thrive, it needs constant representation every election cycle, not just when, you know, particular people are in office as well. Right. So that's kind of one of the things that I had there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you that that districted elections diversify. They make they give better representation across whatever the city, the county, whatever. And you know, at-large elections, it can be won by a slim margin by all the same people.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
And I know that I've had this conversation with a number of commissioners over the years, and I do not mean to suggest that any one of them does not try to represent the entire county. I'm sure that they do. But the question is, first of all, how successful are they at that? And second of all, do the citizens of Washington County feel represented by that body? Do they feel that their concerns are being heard? Do they have a seat at the table? And this comes back to the voter empowerment, right? If you want people to be engaged in politics, they have to believe that their engagement in that process will matter.
Yes.
And if all that's ever happening is the same 45% of the electorate is electing the entire body, they're not going to believe that because it's not true.
And one of the biggest things I think to redistricting that can hurt disenfranchised communities is to split it, right? To have that line go through the middle of an area that is their home, their neighborhood. And so when we split those neighborhoods, we actually do more harm than we do good. In that you then have different of the same neighborhood voting in different areas instead of coming together as one to vote in one district.
Well, that's a districting. I mean, a question is how you district, not whether you district.
No, and fair enough. Fair enough. But even if we were to say yes, we're going to redistrict a certain area, state, local, whatever, we have to be very careful about what that means because when we split those communities, we do more harm than good.
Well, the boundaries have to exist somewhere. How is it done? You know, and you're the mathematician. You know, it's just basic apportionment. Somewhere there has to be lines. How do you divide the communities?
Well, you certainly don't go through the middle of a neighborhood.
Okay, but we were talking potentially that earlier that 2B might be moving east and taking up areas out of the city because I think there's 88 voters in 2B that don't live in the city. I think it's under 100, and that number may increase by 600 or 700. Is that the kind of concern you're having? I mean, that is also to say that whoever the delegate for 2B, if it continues to be Dr. Cham, is that to say that she couldn't represent people outside the city?
No, what I'm saying is when you take one neighborhood that is either lower in socioeconomic status, disenfranchised individuals, they don't have a grocery store, or they have no public transportation, and you make that district down the middle, you are then splitting that neighborhood into two different areas, and then it dilutes that vote. So you can incorporate more areas into, I think, a district, but when you split neighborhoods, you dilute that population, and therefore they have a harder time of that representation to make it onto a ballot.
History, that's exactly how 2B was created as a sub-district.
So that was also exactly how DC split, right? You know, we took different segments, northwest. It's not even, is what I'm saying. So I think that, you know, the census data will come out at some point, but it was kind of a screwed up census data. I mean, they cut it off early. We don't have a good representation of who is here in Washington County, and I think that this is going to hang around for 10 years. We have to be very careful about how we divide.
We don't even know what the legislative boundaries are going to look like. The primary cutoff for registration is February 22nd. And I'm hearing from people that we won't even know what the districts are going to look like till March. I mean, that is so unfair to the candidates.
If that happens,
like
sure.
That
but
we're going to have Kira back to kind of talk about what their strategies are going to be once we figure that out.
And if you can pull me some data, that'd be great.
Sure.
But going back to candidates, you know, once you have endorsed a candidate, how do you work to get them elected?
Well, it's varied, as we've already said. It depends on whether we're having a pandemic or not. But we have had whole cadres of people sign waiving, like real on-the-ground stuff. We've had fundraisers. More recently, we've tried really hard to just, you know, signal boost for people to get. We do have a fairly robust following on social media and email distribution list, and we have a website, and we try to get the message out. We try to make it really clear why we support the candidates that we support, so that the people that support CAP may cross party lines to vote for them. I know of many anecdotal instances where that has happened in the last 2 election cycles, that our endorsement was enough to get people to vote across party lines for folks that they might not have considered before, because we had triaged them basically and said, yes, we think they believe in cooperative government. So that's been really effective, just kind of get out the vote, not the voter registration type of thing, but just, you know, here's who we think you should vote for, and why we think you should vote for them.
Well, locally, this is shaping up to be a pretty busy election cycle. are you going to be in need for more volunteers to?
Always, as I said, we're happy to take anybody who wants to join
So
us.
for those that are interested in your organization, possibly interested to volunteer, how do they get in contact with you to do so?
You can sign up for our email list through our website, citizensabovepartisanship.com. You can also hit our Facebook page, which is also Citizens Above
Partisanship
Yeah.
-Cap Pack.
And you can message us there, or you can follow us, of course, and we'll be happy to add anyone to our list who's interested. You can also just show up for an event and check us out. See if you like what you see.
So last question, what's on the horizon for your organization, and what does success look like for you through this election cycle and going forward?
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, I think visibility, not so much of the organization, although that's important. Andy will get mad at me if I say it's not. But visibility of these issues, visibility of this kind of idea of cooperative government is one of the major things that's success for us, as well as actually walking the walk, right? When we have politicians who actually are cooperating and doing things for the greater good and not just for the next election cycle, that's success for us.
Got it. One last question, Matt.
I don't have any.
Yeah.
Andy?
No, man, we're ready to go. I hope that our website blows up.
Although I will see you on the 28th, right?
Yeah, right on. Thank you for the invitation.
We
I look
made a
forward to it.
match.
We made a match.
We did well.
Right here, Reggie. Good job.
There we go.
All right.
Kira, thank you for coming. I'm sure we're going to have you back because we have an interesting election cycle. I think you're going to be busy, and hopefully you'll have more volunteers.
I hope so too.
Tickets are
Thank
available
you
on
for having
Eventbrite.
me. All right, right on.
That is all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. Most importantly, we hope that you'll join us again next week for another episode of The Flip Side.